Hello there, welcome to Cabbage Patch Soap. My name is Laura, and today we will be cutting the prepper soap that we made on Monday. And let me just get situated here. So this is the soap that we made. We used the lotus fragrance in it. We made a little bit of a texture on the top. And I did add some color to this just because. Excuse me. As you can see, my cough is still here. So I think what I'll be doing for a little while until my throat and everything recovers is we'll do the live on Monday, and then the cutting soap I'll make a video for Thursday. This is hopefully temporary until I recover, and then we can go back to the 2 live videos. So before I pull that out, let me show you, this is the individual bar that we made. Let me just pop this out real quick. There we go. So you can see how that one turned out. It smells really, really good. It has it does have a light floral scent to it. Almost like rose, but something else as well. It's very nice. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this upside down, and I'm also going to be showing you some alternate ways of cutting this. So because I have the equipment, I'm going to use this cutter. In theory, I know like in a prepper situation you wouldn't really make or have probably one of these cutters unless you made a lot of soap and you already had one on hand. So anyway, let me line this up real quick. But since I do have it, I will use it. But I'll show you some alternate things you can do if you don't want to purchase one of these just for making soap. Let me turn this around because there's a bulge in the middle and I want the tops to all be the same. There we go. Okay. Alright, let's make sure. Looks like I can go that way a little bit. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to be showing you some alternate ways of cutting. So here's how this looks. Oh, and look how cool. Okay, so we've got this ring here. I don't know if you can see it. It's like a great big circle. The corners are a lighter color. What this means is that the soap went through gel phase, but for whatever reason, when it got to the corners, either it wasn't warm enough or something, and the gel, it stopped. So this is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with this at all. Mainly what the gel affects is the colors. So you can see how this green in the center is a slightly different, maybe a slightly deeper green than the corners. That's pretty much true for every color. They'll be a little bit deeper, bolder colors if you go through gel, and a little bit paler if you don't, except for yellow. For some reason, most yellows, they tend to become like a pastel yellow when they go through gel. So, you know, that's just something interesting. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with this circle. It's an aesthetic thing only. So that's pretty cool. Okay. So that's the first bar. Here's this one on this end. Oh, look, the circle is even more pronounced. So I don't think I had the oven warm enough when I set it in the oven. So that's probably what caused that. And again, there's, like I said, nothing wrong with that. Doesn't affect the performance of the soap or anything. That's really neat looking. You could even do designs like this on purpose, if you can get it to do this partial gel every time, and have like the center yellow or something and make like the sun or whatever. And then here's the end pieces, which both have that really cool circle design in the middle. That's really neat. Okay, so that was a happy accident. And if you are making soaps, you know, in a situation where you don't have access to electricity and things, you probably will get that gel phase, or that partial gel, I mean. You'll probably get that partial gel pretty often unless you could find a warm spot to let your soap go through gel. So that'll probably be even more common. So that actually worked out great. So let's put this aside and I'll show you a couple of things. One is something that I forgot to show you last time. Because if you're making soap, you're probably going to put it in a mold, right? This is the mold I was using. It's just literally a wooden box with no top. And these liners fit in perfectly. These were handmade by a friend of mine. So was this one. This was different because I wanted one that you could remove the side, because sometimes the soap, even with the liner and everything, it doesn't come out of the box easily, and it's just random when that happens. Instead of rubber bands, you could use string or a rope or whatever you had on hand, twine, wire, whatever. And then this side comes off. And in that way you can better get the, so like, let me show you. If this is in here like this, and if it's not coming out, you can pull it this way. You can kind of, you see how when you pull up on it, it sticks out. If there was a wall there like this, you wouldn't be able to do that. So by removing that, it gives you a little bit of extra control and able to pull the mold out more easily. I kept this one because it warped somehow. So when you see, you can see it's like tweaked. Something happened to it. I don't know. But it still works just fine. Anyway, and there's a hole at the bottom so that you can pull it out and it won't create suction. That was one of the problems with these molds, is there's no hole. And sometimes if the liner fit too perfectly, especially paper liners, you go to pull it out and there's suction. So if you drill a hole in the bottom, you won't have that problem. You could make these with all four sides removable, and then just like set them up like this. If none of these sides were nailed together or anything, they were just floating. So what you would do is set your liner in. If you and these are silicone liners, so they last pretty much forever if you take care of them. So you could get a couple of these ahead of time and then build a mold around this. So like you would just set these, if you pretend that all four of these walls were not connected to anything. And you do want a bottom, because otherwise it'll sag on the bottom and the bottoms of your soaps will be rounded and they won't stand up. Okay, and then you could take string or a band or something. It might help to have somebody kind of hold them in place for you, like this. And then you could fill it with soap, and that would prevent the liner plus the soap will prevent it from like collapsing inward. So that is one option for soap molds. You do not need a silicone liner. You can use anything. If you're not intending to sell the soap, you could even just use paper to line the mold. The reason I don't is because paper tends, and just regular paper, it tends to stick to the soap, and that's not good. But for selling them, and plus if it gets wet and stuff, it's kind of gunky. But in a survival situation, you probably won't care about the aesthetic so much. If you can get a hold of paper, even like leaves could be used probably, as long as they're safe to use. There's a lot of different things you can use to line your molds, and you can even use reuse plastic containers. There's a lot of different things you can pour your soap into that you can use as a mold. So if you have a plastic container that you use for something else, you can put the soap in it, and once it hardens, just pop it out. Just make sure that the sides are either like straight up 90-degree angles, or make sure that they are angled outward slightly. Because if you have a container with the sides angled inward, you won't be able to get the soap out without breaking the container. So, so that's what I wanted to show you on the molds. And these can be made out of, like I said, out of anything. You can even use like a wire basket. Like I have one right here. I'll show you. So you can even use a wire basket like this, as long as you line it with something that the soap won't seep out of. And you can see here the sides angle outward just slightly. So this would work. You could use this, line it with paper or something, or leaves or whatever, pour your soap into it. It doesn't have to be a solid thing like a wooden box. The wooden boxes are just nice because if you do get a leak, the mess remains contained, whereas with the wire basket, if you have a leak, it'll spill out probably. But that's okay. And you could also invest in something like this, one of these cavity molds. And again, this is silicone, so it lasts pretty much forever, as long as you take care of it. And then the last thing I wanted to show you is cutting the soap. So if you don't have a cutter like mine, you can use something like this. This is just a little frame made out of wood. It's got a couple wing nuts here that you can use to tighten the wire. And so on this side, you would loosen it, pull the wire tight across. So let me show you. I have not used this in so long because I didn't like how I couldn't get perfectly even bars. They were all kind of, like I said, it was a more rustic look. They were all different sizes and things. Okay, so you got this wire, and you just pull it across, and there's a washer there, and you want this to go in between. You pull it tight, okay, and then you can tighten it down with the wing nut, and then you have a reasonably taut wire, and you can just go like this down. You just hold the frame and you go down to cut the soap. The problem with this is there's wood down here, so you've got the space. So if you have like a, let me show you. If you have a flush, surface like the table, there's a gap. So I'll show you sideways, like, because it would be this way. There's a gap. You can see there's a gap between the wire and the top of the table, and I'll show you sideways here. So like pretend you're cutting this way. There's like this big gap here. So that means that the soap has to be up on something that's smaller than this is wide. So for example, in theory, you could take this, turn it upside down, put your soap on top of it, and then that way when you go to cut downwards, you can go all the way to the bottom. And these two arms here will go below the surface, the top of the surface here, because otherwise, if you do it this way, like on a table or something, you've got this gap here, and it's not going to cut the soap all the way down. And that was one of the major problems I had with this, was everything I used to cut didn't lift the soap up high enough. So for example, there's this, and what you would do is you would place your soap in here, and it came with this string, and you could go like this, but this is like a kind of like a fishing string. So if your soap was like a firm soap, had a lot of hard oils, this would not cut through it. So you could use this in theory, and you can see it just goes all the way down. I had like a frame like this one that was made out of like a hard plastic that came, I believe it came with this, and it was too shallow. So when you went to cut down, it didn't go all the way. It would hit the table. It was not very well designed. But with this wooden one, you can do that. And then with this, and this is something you can build on your own. Like I said, I wouldn't use the string. I would probably use wire on this instead, and then just go across like that. But other than that, the design is okay. And what you would do is, you got these wing nuts here, you can loosen this, and what this does is it lets you measure out the size of your bar. So you just loosen these, and you can make the bars bigger or smaller, and then choose where to cut them. So if you want really thin bars, you can cut here, and then measure out to here, and then just tighten the wing nuts. And then your block of soap would rest in here. So that's another thing that you can do if you're trying to get semi-accurate, the same size bars for some reason, like if you were to sell them. But in a survival situation, I don't know how important that is. But this can be made. This has, I don't know why it has a level. But on the other side here, you can see it's got this metal thing. What that's for is you're supposed to be able to turn it over and take your bar of soap and slide it across to do beveling. I've never used it for that. These two grooves leave marks on the bars, and so I didn't ever use it for that. I tried cutting soap on this a couple of times and just didn't like the design, so I stopped using it. So maybe what I can do is give this to somebody if they want it, this with the cutter, because I kept them just in case something happened and I needed it, like a backup, but I've, like in 2 years or however long I've had my new cutter, I've never used this. So it's just been sitting in bubble wrap, and I think it needs to go to home. So if somebody wants this, and if you pay the shipping, I'll send it to you, because I do not have a use for it, and I'd rather it go to a good home. And these wires, by the way, they will eventually over time like break and stuff. You can just replace it with a new wire. A lot of people use like guitar strings, or just whatever wire you have on hand that's strong enough to cut through the soap. So and these cutters will not cut through, again, they will not cut through super hard soap. You need to take it out of the mold when it's firm but not starting to get hard. So coconut soap is a very bad idea. Coconut oil soap is a very bad idea to use because it will get hard very, very quickly. But blended oils or soft oils are totally fine. And I used this one with the other, not with this base, but with the other base. I used this one for a really, really, really long time. And it did work once you got enough space, you got your soap up on a platform that gave you enough space to cut all the way through. So I can confirm that one does work, but I just don't need it anymore because I've got my new cutter. So, yep. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. Hopefully, it gave you some helpful information. Always do research, especially in a prepper situation, because, I have not been in a survival situation before, so I am not the expert at all, but hopefully these just tips and stuff will give you like another direction on where to look for information. And I should be back on Monday with the new live. So thank you guys all for watching. If you enjoyed this, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to my channel. It really helps me out. And if you guys have any suggestions on videos for the future, anything you'd like to see, please leave a comment down below. I love hearing from you guys, and have a great rest of your week.